When renowned investigative journalist Claire Donovan wakes up in a hospital with no memory, she thinks the worst is behind her, but the real nightmare begins when she uncovers a trail of betrayal, a love built on lies, and a conspiracy that goes deeper than blood. In a world where nothing is what it seems, can she expose the truth before it buries her for good? Claire Donovan had always chased the truth like it was oxygen. With a recorder in her coat pocket and a camera slung over her shoulder, she had exposed corruption in city councils, dismantled drug rings with her pen, and even forced the resignation of a senator last winter, but none of that prepared her for what began with a rusted cassette tape mailed to her office in a plain envelope with no return address, no name, just a note: play this before midnight or the next one. Deesh stared at the cassette for hours, its magnetic film barely visible through the plastic window. The tape was ancient. No one used cassettes anymore. But Claire had a box full of relics in her storage room at home, including an old Sony tape recorder that still worked if she smacked it hard enough. Moment the sun dipped below the skyline, casting the city in twilight gold, she left her office and headed home, the tape still sealed in a Ziploc bag. Her instincts whispered that someone was watching her. She didn't walk fast. She didn't look over her shoulder. She simply got in her car, locked the doors, and drove. The apartment was quiet when she arrived. Too quiet. Claire's heart pounded as she twisted the key in the lock. Nothing was disturbed. Everything was in place. She slipped off her shoes, set the recorder on her desk, and clicked in the tappet. Audio crackled. Then came a voice, slow, familiar. Molly thought I buried this with your sister. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Her sister Amelia had disappeared. 6 years ago, declared dead 2 years later. A closed case. No leads, no body. But this voice was a ghost. A ghost that knew something no one should know. The voice continuity: you dig far enough into the Donovan name, and you'll find rot beneath your feet, Claire. This tape is your first clue. The clock is ticking. Thin Celine Sesh replayed it 4 times. She hadn't heard that voice in years, but she remembered it. The way he said her name like a curse. Vincent Hale, the man who had once claimed to love her sister, the man who vanished the week Amelia disappeared. The same man who had testified as an informant in a drug case Claire herself had exposed. Vint had never been charged or found again. Claire sat at her desk, eyes wide, fingers trembling. The tape was real. The voice undeniable. Her sister's case wasn't dead. It was breathing, scratching at the surface, clawing its way back into the light, and Claire would dig until her nails bled to find the truth. She picked up her phone and dialed the only person who ever believed her theory about Amelia's disappearance, Detective Jordan Ray, who is retired now, but still sharper than anyone on the force. When he answered, his voice was groggy. No, it's late, she said. But someone just woke up. A nightmare I thought was buried. Didn't hesitate. Listening. Claire met him at his apartment in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of the city, the kind of place where nothing ever happened and everyone liked it that way. Reyes opened the door wearing a robe, a cup of black coffee already in hand, as if he'd been expecting. Hirsch handed him the tape and the note. He read the message, then played the recording, his eyes narrowing at the voice. That's Hale, all right, he muttered. But this tape, he waved it slowly like it was radioactive. This means someone wants you back. Einer wants me gone, Claire said. Her arms crossed. He poured her a cup of coffee and motioned for her to sit. They sat at the kitchen table like 2 old soldiers reviewing battle plans. You think he's alive? Claire asked. If he is, Reyes replied. Then someone kept him hidden or quiet all these years. Maybe both. Or maybe this is someone else playing with your head. Claire shook her head. Too much of this was personal, too specific. Someone knew her sister, knew exactly how to get under her skin. You need to start at the beginning, she said again. The night Amelia disappeared, she still remembered that night vividly. The last call from Amelia, her voice urgent, shaky, meeting someone she wouldn't name at a parking garage downtown. Claire had rushed there that night, but the place was empty. Just a trail of scuff marks and a hair clip she recognized as Amelia's. Had turned that evidence over to the police, but they had dismissed it as a coincidence and later buried it when no further lead surfaced. Idris leaned back in his chair, thinking, if we're doing this, we do it my way. Full discretion off the grid. You tell no one. Not your editor. Not your friends. Not even your dog if you had one. Claire agreed without hesitation. They started with Amelia's old apartment. The landlord had since rented it out, but Reyes flashed his old badge and convinced the new tenants to let them in for a quick look. The place was different, painted, clean, furnished, but Claire remembered the layout perfectly. Behind a loose panel in the closet she had once helped Amelia install, Claire found a showbox full of photographs, her letters, and a worn leather journal. Her hands trembled as she opened the journal, flipping past doodles and grocery lists until she found entries that chilled her blood. Met V again. He's different this time, distant, afraid, watching over his shoulder constantly. I think he's hiding something. By Ganather entry. Days later, read if something happens to me. It's not random. Not an accident. V is in trouble. Deep trouble. And now I'm in it too. Claire sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ink as if it might fade before her eyes. This is proof that she whispered that she knew something. Grease flipped through the rest of the journal, stopping at a sketch Amelia had drawn, a strange symbol overlapping triangles and circling a serpent. He frowned. I've seen this before, he said. In a case I wasn't allowed to finish. He returned to Reyes' apartment and pulled out a locked box from his storage closet. Inside were stacks of unsolved files, some marked with red stamps, others simply too sensitive for public consumption. Found the file in question, photos of crime scenes, symbols matching Amelia's sketch, scrawled in blood on walls, hidden in graffiti patterns on tattoos found on victims' bodies, all linked to a criminal organization known only as Arc Vein. Claire repeated the name, tasting it like poison. Underground blackmail, extortion, assassinations. Reyes explained. No one's ever proven they exist, but the victims all have connections, political, criminal, financial. So Amelia stumbled onto something and got silenced. Claire said. Reyes nodded. Or was used as bait for something bigger. Claire felt a fresh wave of nausea. She stood too fast, nearly knocking over her coffee. Her phone buzzed again. Another envelope had arrived. This one slid under the door of Reyes' apartment while they were inside. He grabbed it, cautiously opened it, and pulled out a single Polaroid photo. It was recent. Claire recognized her apartment. In the background in the photo, a woman was tied to a chair, gagged, bruised, but alive. Her eyes were wide with terror. Claire's breath caught again. It was Amelish's alive. The message written across the bottom of the photo in red marker read on. Weak. Claire and Reyes looked at each other. The same unspoken thought passing between them. They were in deep. And the clock was now ticking louder than ever. Morning after the tape played, Claire didn't sleep. Instead, she sat in her living room, lights off, fingers wrapped tightly around a lukewarm coffee mug, replaying the voice in her head. You dig far enough into the Donovan name, and you'll find Rod beneath your own feet. Be sunrise. She had mapped out every name Vincent Hale had ever been associated with, every case Amelia might have touched, every whisper of corruption surrounding the disappearance. It was a spider web, and she was caught dead center. She didn't go to her newsroom. Instead, she met Jordan Reyes at a cafe on the corner of 5th and Mercer, a place where the blinds were always drawn and the waitress never asked questions. Jordan hadn't changed much. He still wore the same brown leather jacket, same disapproving frown etched deep between his brows. He listened as she recited the tape and handed him a digital copy she'd made before locking the original in her safe. You think he's baiting you? He asked, sipping his black coffee. He's baiting someone, Claire replied, and I think he wants me to follow the trail. He leaned back, studying her with a look only detectives knew how to wear, the kind that dissected a person down to their bones. If this is about Amelia, we're not just unearthing a cold case. We're stepping into something that might get you killed again. Claire's voice was ice. Let them try it at night. Her apartment window cracked. She hadn't heard anything, just found the glass fractured in a perfect spiderweb pattern. The stone lying on the floor wrapped in a note. Stop digging or join Herkler. Didn't call the police. She sent the note to Jordan and packed a bag. She wasn't staying another night in a place where shadows knew her name. She booked a room at a boutique hotel downtown where her sources often met her off record. Jordan agreed to meet her there with files from an old internal investigation involving Vincent Hale and a pharmaceutical shell company Amelia had interned with the summer before she vanished. The records were deliberately messy, so shell companies, payments under aliases, employees listed who didn't exist, but one name did stand out: a doctor. Claire remembered Amelia mentioning once. Dr. Evelyn Sarda. Reached out to her network and by the next day had an address. Dr. Sardo, now living 2 towns over, retired early after what was described as a professional meltdown. Claire didn't wait, drove alone, clouds thick over the road, rain threatening to fall. The house was isolated, tall pines hugging it like secrets. Sardo answered the door in a robe, her eyes red, raw, tired. She didn't deny knowing Amelia, but the moment Claire mentioned Vincent Hale, she froze. He said he'd kill me if I ever talked, she whispered, fingers trembling. I signed things I didn't understand. I thought it was just a stipend program for gifted students, but it was blood testing. Claire, they were using unapproved compounds, DNA splicing. I don't know what Amelia found out, but she was scared. Claire felt her stomach drop. She recorded everything with Sardo's permission. Then she asked the question that had haunted her for 6 years. Do you think my sister's dead? Dear Sardo's lips quivered. I don't know, but if she's alive, she's not the same girl you knew. As Claire left, headlights flared from behind. She turned sharply, but the car sped off, vanishing into the trees. Her heart pounded. She wasn't just chasing ghosts anymore. They were chasing her. Back at the hotel, she found her room door ajar. Her bag had been rifled through. Her recorder was gone, but on the bed was a flash drive and a new note. The next piece of truth lies in Firesh plugged the drive into her laptop. A video loaded, grainy like surveillance. Inside a lab lined with steel and shadows, a girl strapped to a gurney, thrashing, screaming. Claire gasped. Amelia's video cut off abruptly, replaced by coordinates. Stared at them long enough to memorize every digit. Claire wasn't backing down. The fire had started, and she was walking straight into it. Claire didn't wait for Jordan. She scribbled a quick note and left it with the hotel clerk in case he showed coordinates. Burned in her mind, she drove out of the city past the industrial edge until the skyline turned to dead fields and rusted signage. The address took her to a decommissioned research facility covered in ivy and decay, but the steel fence humming faintly said someone still kept an eye on it. She waited until twilight, then scaled the fence, her gloved hands gripping the rusted chain link, heart racing. Each step across the cracked asphalt echoed like gunshots in the silence. She found a side entrance, pried open, and ducked inside. Flashlight cutting through the dust and darkness. Facility stank of bleach and mold as if the air itself had memory. Scattered papers, lines of code, equipment tagged with warning labels, and more cameras. Claire counted 4 in the first corridor, all blinking red. All Alivesh reached what looked like a medical theater. Glass wall shattered. Control room was abandoned. On the observation deck, a leather-bound ledger lay beneath layers of dust. When she flipped it open, she saw her sister's name scrawled under Subject 23, next to phrases like failed adaptation, volatile recall, and sedative resistencia. Noise behind her. Claire turned sharply only to find nothing but her shadow twitching under the emergency light. Then a creak above. A shadow moved across the catwalk. She followed carefully, the flashlight beam with tight knuckles. Tighter inside a sealed wing, she found a room colder than ice. Metal bed, its chains and old projector still humming. She clicked it on and the reel jumped to life, showing scenes too surreal to be imagined. Trials, children screaming, sedatives, injections, mutating tissue, overlay graphics that didn't belong in any published journal. Then Amelia again was not just strapped down this time, but staring directly into the lens, eyes hollow, mouth stitched shut. Claire fell back. Her knees buckled, but the noise behind her rose again. This time, a voice: "You shouldn't have come." Claire. Vincent Hale stood in the doorway, perfectly composed suit, crisp smile. "Unshaken, you always were too curious for your good," he said, stepping closer. "What did you do to her?" Claire's voice was Barely human. Vincent gave a slight shrug. What we were funded to do. Evolution takes sacrifice. She wanted to expose it. We couldn't allow that. Claire reached for her pocket, but he was faster and grabbed her wrist, twisting it. Her flashlight clattered to the floor. In the dark, he whispered, "Do you know she's still alive? You saw her. That's the part that will break you." A blast shattered the window behind them. Smoke. Jordan Reyes barged in, gun raised, yelling, "Get away from her!" Vincent ran, disappearing into the corridor. Claire and Jordan followed, but by the time they reached the loading dock, he was gone. "You okay?" he asked, breath heavy. Claire didn't answer. She looked out into the shadows, feeling more lost than ever. Amelia was alive, but a ghost of herself. Vincent still walked free, and the deeper they dug, the more the world around them seemed rigged to explode. And on the wall behind them, written in blood smears, "Remember Project Seraph." And Jordan read it aloud. Claire stared at the word, knowing somehow it was the next key in the unraveling nightmare. "We need to find out what Seraphim is," she said, "even if it kills you." And deep inside her, she feared it already had. Claire. Donovan sat across from the man she once called father, her eyes unblinking as the weight of his words crashed into her like a tidal wave. Harold Donovan's confession hadn't just unraveled a mystery, it had burned her past to ashes. The man she'd admired, feared, and questioned was no longer a puzzle. He was a ghost, a relic of manipulation and sacrifice, hiding behind the guise of familial love. "I never wanted you to get involved," he said, his voice trembling, "but you made sure I would." Claire replied quietly, "You made sure the trail would lead to you." Harold's hands, once so firm in their grasp of power, now trembled on the table between them. "You had to know. Someone had to carry it all. I thought it would be me forever. But when she died," he broke off, his voice caught in a storm of guilt and memory. Claire leaned in. "You sent me away from the truth. You buried everything she left behind." He nodded slowly. "Because what she uncovered, it was bigger than both of us. The pharmaceutical network, the forged documents, the clinical trials, all of it. Your mother found out too late, and they silenced her." Claire closed her eyes. It wasn't the first time she'd heard the theories, but hearing them confirmed by her father made them blades to her soul. "So she didn't overdose," Claire said. "She was murdered." Yes. The truth shattered the last of Claire's defenses. Her mother, Eleanor, had been trying to expose the same corruption Claire had been chasing. All the connections, the missing data, the manipulated patients, the forged identities, it all led back to the same conglomerate. And now Claire had something they didn't. Everything. Her mother's hidden tapes. The original copies. "I need to end this," Claire whispered. "I can help," Harold said, eyes wide with desperation. "Let me help you." Claire hesitated. There was a time she would have begged for his approval, his guidance. Now, she saw him for what he was, a broken man. Not evil, but complicit. And maybe in that shattered morality, there was still some utility. "You give me the names, the contacts, the ones funding this from the shadows," she said. Harold reached into his coat and produced a key. "Locker 212 at East Point Station. Everything is in there. But you must go tonight. They know we've talked." Claire stood up. "Then I'll go." He grabbed her hand. "Claire, be careful. You're not just chasing ghosts anymore. You're hunting men who have everything to lose." She pulled her hand free. "So am I." The night was cold as Claire approached East Point Station. Her every footstep echoed across the concrete, her breath curling in the air. Inside, the lockers sat like silent sentinels. She found 212, inserted the key, and opened the door. Inside was a briefcase. She took it and left without looking back. Back at her apartment, Claire opened the briefcase slowly. It contained files, USB drives, ledger, books, meticulous documentation of every false trial, every payout, every silenced whistleblower. It also held one more thing, a letter addressed to her in her mother's handwriting. She unfolded it, tears already forming. "My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, then you've found the truth. And that means you're in danger. But I raised you to be brave, to stand for what's right, even when the world turns against you. I couldn't save myself, but maybe you can save others. Finish what I started. Love always, Mom." Claire sat frozen, the paper trembling in her hands. All the pain, the confusion, the betrayals, it all crystallized into purpose. She wiped her eyes and looked at the clock. She had work to do. She contacted Olivia first. Her friend's voice cracked with emotion when Claire told her what she'd found. "I'll help," Olivia said. "Whatever you need." Next came the media. The files were too big to go unnoticed. She sent copies to every investigative journalist she knew, along with anonymous backups to whistleblower platforms. Then she disappeared. Claire changed her name, her appearance. She moved like a shadow, using burner phones and safe houses. From the sidelines, she watched the empire begin to fall. Executives arrested, news headlines screaming scandal, Harold Donovan publicly disgraced. One day, as she sat in a coastal cafe in a remote town, Claire saw a familiar face on the television. Harold. He was giving a deposition, testifying against his former allies. She watched in silence. When the camera zoomed in, she saw his eyes glance ever so slightly to the side. It was brief, but it was enough. He knew she was watching, and he was still protecting her. Claire smiled sadly and stood up. The sun outside was bright. A new day, a new beginning. But she would never forget the past, never forget what it had taken. She walked down the road, her silhouette growing smaller as the screen faded to black. Moral of the story: truth may be buried, love may be betrayed, and the past may be erased, but resilience is the one force no darkness can destroy. Life lesson: trust is fragile. Even those closest to you can wear a mask. Always question, observe, and listen to your instincts.